पर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सलवात।
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
We request your forgiveness. Unfortunately, technology has not been on our side today. Recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
With the permission of Sayyida Zahra salamullahi alayha and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, we will recite the masa'ib of the family of Abdillah alayhi salam, of the sisters, the ladies, the daughters and the son of Abdillah alayhi salam, the masa'ib of the day of Arbaeen. With your permission, recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين مولانا أبو القاسم محمد.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد، صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا ابن رسول الله، يا ثار الله وابن فارق والوتر المؤتور، يا رحمة الله الواسعة، يا باب نجاة الأمة، يا غريبي وغريبي وغريبي يا مظلوم الشهيد كربلاء، يا ليتنا يا ليتنا كنا معكم صادتي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فقد قال أبي عبد الله الحسين عليه السلام في يوم عاشوراء في أرض كرب وبلاء، أنا قتيل الأبرار. I am that shaheed, I am that mazloom, I am that gharib who was killed, crying and killed through the tears. يا أبا عبد الله، قال إمام المجتبى عليه السلام: لا يومك يومك يا أبا عبد الله. There is no day like your day, يا أبا عبد الله. They say لا يومك يوم They say there is no day like the day of Ashura, for it's that day upon which we gather to give pursa to Bibi Rubab and Bibi Farwa and Bibi Layla and Bibi Zainab and all the mothers at Karbala. But most of all, it's the day in which we gather to cry for the sweetheart of Zahra. The Imams tell us when you cry for Aba Abdillah, don't cry with any sharam. Don't cry feeling embarrassed. Don't cry thinking, oh, my mother or my father or my brother is sitting next to me. No, cry in the way a child, the Imam says, cry in the way a child cries for its mother. Don't hide your face. Don't lower your voice. For this is Zahra alayhi salam crying for her son Hussain. Partake in that sunnat of Zahra salamullahi alayha. We say La yawmak ya Aba Abdillah. On a day when Imam al-Mujtaba was leaving this world, Aba Abdillah goes to his brother. He sees the state of the body of Imam al-Mujtaba. The Imam is vomiting part of his liver. His skin has turned pale and yellow because of the poison. And Aba Abdillah begins to cry and wail, seeing the situation of his Imam. Looking at him, Al-Mujtaba says, Ya Aba Abdillah, la yawmaka yawm, there is no day like your day. Zainab al-Kubra alayhi salam says, As-salamu ala al-Hussain al-Madhlum al-Maktul al-Majruh al-Adshar. Peace be upon Hussain, the oppressed, the Madhlum, the one who was killed thirsty and alone. Then she says, Al-Madhbu min al-Qaffar, because there are two ways of severing the head. One way is to cut the head from the front, the other is to cut the head from the back. Zainab says, Madhbu min al-Qaffar, when they cut my brother Hussain, they cut him from the back. She says, Bila jurmin wala khata, never had Hussain ever hurt anyone. الذي غسله مضما وقفنه رذال كربلاء. The ghusl of Hussain was his own blood, and the kafan was the sands of Karbala. He was cut by the enemies, they even took his clothing and his turban. We call out to you, Ya Aba Abdillah. We have been kept away from you this year, Ya Aba Abdillah. We aren't there with you this year, Ya Aba Abdillah, but from wherever we are, in whichever land we find ourselves, together we all call out, Assalamu alayka, Ya Aba Abdillah. Our bodies may not be with you, Ya Aba Abdillah, but our minds, our souls, our every being is with you, Ya Aba Abdillah. For today is the day when Amir al-Mu'mineen walks from Najaf to Karbala. Today is the day when Rasulullah descends on Karbala. Today is the day when every prophet from Adam to Khatam comes for the ziyarah of Aba Abdillah. Fatima al-Zahra comes from Medina. Zainab al-Kubra comes from Sham to Karbala. And Imam al-Sajjad comes from Medina, a grave not covered even by a dhari, to come to his father. All calling out, Labayka ya Hussain, Labayka ya Hussain. As the ladies and remaining family members of Aba Abdillah reach the land of Sham, they say Bibi Kulthum alayhi salam spoke to Shimr, and she said, Oh Shimr, I have a request from you. He said, what is it? She said, there are two. First, allow us to enter from different gates into the city, because we are not from those who are paraded in front of the people. And secondly, remove the heads from in front of us, for these are the heads of our beloved, dripping with fresh blood. Shimr La'anatullah says, as for your first request, O lady, we will take you through the main gate all together. Why? So that Sham can celebrate the bringing of the captives. And as for your second request, O lady, we will never remove these heads, for we are victorious. Allahu Akbar. They say as they enter into Sham, a man looks towards Imam al-Sajjad. He looks towards Imam al-Sajjad and he says, may Allah curse you. Allah. The Imam looks at him. He says, oh man, have you read the ayah of the Quran in which Allah says, say, I do not ask anything from you except the love of my near ones? He says, yes, I have. The Imam says, oh man, have you read the verse in which Allah says, you acquire 1/5 which will go towards Allah, His Prophet, and the near ones? Again, the man says, yes, I have read this verse. And he says, oh man, have you read the verse, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلُ الْبَيْتِ. Again, the man says, yes. Imam Sajjad says, you know who these verses refer to? He says, the family of Rasulullah. The Imam says, we are the family of Rasulullah. These are the women of Rasulullah. These children you see in front of you are the children of Rasulullah. The man begins to beg the Imam for forgiveness. At this time, one of the remaining companions of Rasulullah, Sahal bin Sa'd al-Sa'di, he is passing through Sham. He hears this, he sees what's going on. He asks the people, why are you so excited? Why are you in such a frenzy? It's as if it's a day of Eid in the city of Sham, Sahal says. They say, woe be upon you, you must not be from here. For today is not a day of Eid. I am surprised, narrator says, I am surprised the skies are not weeping blood, and I am surprised the earth is not swallowing its inhabitants, for these are the children of Rasulullah and the grandchildren of Rasulullah being paraded in the streets of Sham. Sahel turns, he sees the head of Abdillah on a spear. He sees the head of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas on another spear. He sees Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam chained with spears and spikes poking into his neck. He comes to the Imam and he says, oh, I am Sahel, I am one of the companions of Rasulullah. Is there anything I can offer you, my beloved Imam? The Imam says, oh Sahel, I have a few requests. He says, go and try and remove the heads from the spears, for this is not befitting of my father and my uncles and my brothers. And then he says, what? He says, oh Sahel, can you get me a piece of cloth? Sahel says, I got the cloth for the Imam. I wondered, what will the Imam do with the cloth? Sahel says, I saw as As-Sajjad placed the cloth between the zanjeer on his neck and the skin of his neck. And he turned towards Sahel. He said, oh Sahel, from Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa to Sham, this chain has been cutting the neck of Sajjad, such that the blood continually pours. Bibi Sakina alayhi salam asks her aunt Zainab as they are in this courtyard and in these streets of Sham. She says, oh auntie, why do they throw things at us? Oh aunt, why do they curse us? Oh aunt, why? Why do they attack us in this way? And it's as if the enemies themselves answer, for one of them calls out, O people, come and attack these women and children, for they are the children of the man who killed your father and grandfathers in Badr and Hunayn. The narrators say at this moment someone pokes Bibi Zainab with a spear in her ribs. Another throws boiling water on the head of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, until all that could be heard was the cries of the children. Wa abata, wa Aba Abdillah, oh Aba Abdillah, come back to us, help us. Ya Aba Abdillah. As the family prepares to leave Sham, weeks, months later, and return towards Medina, the hadith say Imam al-Sajjad collects all the heads and he takes them. And as they're about to leave, Bibi Zainab stops for a moment, salamullahi alayha, and she turns to the ladies of Sham. She says, oh ladies of Sham, we are leaving, but there is a young girl in this. There was a young girl in this zindan who every night used to say, "My brother Sajjad, when will we go home? My brother, the birds can go home. Can I not go home? But oh ladies, we are going, but she will never return to Medina. Ladies, she is only 4 years old. When you are in your day, go into the zindan and spend a few moments with our daughter Sakina." In this way, they leave Sham, they head towards Medina until they reach a point in which one road leads to Karbala, the other to Medina. Until Bibi Zainab says, "My son Sajjad, my nephew Sajjad, my Imam Sajjad, we didn't get to do the Ziyarah on Ashura. We didn't get to do the Ziyarah on the 11th of Muharram. If we tried to go near the body of our loved one, Shimr would whip us on that day. Sajjad, take us to Karbala. Take us to the land of trial and tribulation." As they approach one of the remaining daughters of Imam al-Hussain, she awakes from her sleep and begins to cry, "Auntie Zainab, I smell the fragrance of my father Abdillah. Auntie Zainab, I hear the cries of Ali Asghar. Auntie Zainab, I hear as if Akbar is saying, 'Come to me.' Is this Karbala?" Allahu Akbar. The caravan is reaching Karbala on a day like today, the day of Arbaeen, the day of the Arbaeeniyah of Abu Abdillah. As the caravan enters, they see Jabir is there, Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, the famous companion of Rasulullah. And as they enter, imagine the scene, reaching Karbala, one mother after another. Layla would run towards the body, towards the grave of Ali Akbar alayhi salam. Rubab would run towards a tiny grave of Ali Asghar alayhi salam. Ramla would run towards that piece of land which contains the pieces of the body of Qasim. But there is a lady called Masa'ib, and there's a reason she's called Masa'ib, because as Zainab al-Kubra salam reaches Karbala, she must have remembered when she was a little girl they killed her mother. When she was older, she heard Jibreel cry out, "Haidar al-Karrar has been struck in Kufa." She would have seen as Hasan al-Mujtaba vomited his liver. She didn't just see that, she saw as the companions and the so-called close ones of Rasulullah fired arrows on the janazah of Hasan al-Mujtaba, such that Abbas and Hussain had to pull arrows out of the body of Imam al-Mujtaba. Now she stands in Karbala. Should she run to the grave of Akbar? Should she run to the grave of Asghar? Should she throw herself on the pieces of Qasim? Which shaheed was there on that day who wasn't either the son or brother of Bibi Zainab alayhi salam? In that state, there's only one grave she felt she could go to. She walked towards the grave of Abu Abdillah, calling out, "Oh brother, Ya Hussain, oh beloved of Rasulullah, Ya Hussain, oh son of Makkah and Mina, Ya Hussain, oh son of Fatima, Ya Hussain, oh son of Ali, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain," until she falls unconscious on the grave of her brother. When she awakens, she says she looks towards the people to see where is Sajjad. She calls on Imam Zain al-Abidin. She says, "Ya Sayyid al-Sajjad, oh my son Sajjad, take me to the grave of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas." That grave by the Furat, that on that day of Ashura, that Alamdar said, "Don't take me back." They buried him where he fell. They went towards the grave until Imam Sajjad stopped. He said, "Oh Aunt Zainab, Hada Qabr Ammu Abbas, there is the grave of my uncle Abbas." One of the khadims of the haram says, when I started cleaning the grave of Abul Fadl al-Abbas for the first time, I thought to myself, I've heard my whole life, Ghazi Abbas was so tall his feet would drag in the sand. But this grave is a small grave. This grave is not the grave of a man who we were taught was so tall. He says, in that night I saw Bibi Pak Zahra in my dream. I saw Zahra in my dream and she said, oh man, don't ever say this again. Do you know why the grave is so small? Because someone cut off the left arm, someone cut off the right arm. When he was on the ground, they cut at his body until Abbas's body was such that the grave is as it is today. Zainab al-Kubra goes towards that grave, and narrations don't tell us what was said, but my heart says, as the poet writes, maybe she would have lamented, oh Abbas, as soon as they killed you, they came to burn our tent. Oh Abbas, did you see a shimmer stole my hijab? Oh Abbas, did you hear the scream of Sakina? Oh Abbas, did you hear the cries of Zainab? Oh Abbas, but forgive me. Why? Because Amanat was left with me, and Amana was left with me. I have left that Amana in the Zindan of Sham. That Sakina for whom you gave everything, Abbas, is no more. As we said, Jabir also was present. He had arrived at the grave before the family arrived. And he said to his companion, Atiya, Atiya, take me towards the graves. Atiya said that there isn't any covering on these graves, my master Jabir. How will I know which grave is which? Jabir said, and this is the way that they used to go for ziyarah even up until the time of Imam Sadiq. We are blessed that we go for ziyarah so easily. He said, take me from grave to grave. I will smell the perfume of Aba Abdillah and Yahlul Bayt, and I'll be able to tell you which grave is which. He says, until they took him to a grave, Jabir said, Atiya, this is the grave of my master Hussain. This is the grave of my master who I saw being born, who I saw on the back of Rasulullah, who I saw on the chest of Rasulullah, who I saw Rasulullah place on his shoulders. This is that grave. They say Jabir grabs the grave and he begins to scream, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain. Will a friend not reply to a friend? How shall you answer while the blood from your vein is on your chest? How shall you answer while your body is in Karbala, but your head is in Sham, Ya Aba Abdillah? They say Jabir falls unconscious. As Atiya awakes him, he says, Jabir, there is a kafila coming. I don't know, is it Bani Umayyah or is it from the family of Rasulullah? He says, Atiya, go and see who is it. Jabir narrates, when Atiya came back, there was pain on his face. There was difficulty on his face. He looked to me, he said, oh Jabir, this is the family of Rasulullah. These are the ladies of Rasulullah. But Master Jabir, they are being led by whom? Jabir said, who is the old man? He said, it's not the old man. It is the 25-year-old son of Aba Abdillah, Zainul Abidin, who has been tortured in such a way that his hair has gone grey and his back has become bent. Jabir says, I witnessed, and other narrators say they witnessed as Imam al-Sajjad took the blessed head of Aba Abdillah alayhi salam, and he placed the head into the grave. He says, we saw the lips of Aba Abdillah moving, saying what? Saying, my son, the baby. Place the body of the baby on my chest, my son. But be gentle, Sajjad. For the neck of Asghar is still hot from the arrow. He says, the lips said, place the neck on my neck so I may comfort my son Asghar. They return back to Medina. Bas Majlis Tamam, they return back to Medina. And as they near, Bibi Kulthum called out, O city of my grandfather, do not accept us. When we left, we had so much, we return with nothing but sorrow. When we departed, we had everyone. When we return, we have no men or sons. Imam Sajjad places a camp outside of Medina. He called on Bishr, one of the poets of Arabia. He says, Bishr, do you recite poetry in the way your father recited poetry? Bishr says, yes, my master. He says, oh Bishr, in that case, go to the city of my grandfather and announce our return. Bishr rides into Medina calling out, Ya Ahle Yathrib, O people of Yathrib, do not stay in your homes, for there is no place of sanctity or safety or comfort left. Why? Come to the grave of Rasulullah and mourn, for Hussain has been killed in Karbala. Hussain has been shaheed in Karbala. Hussein's body lies in Karbala while his head was on a spear in Kufa and in Sham. Until they say a lady approaches Bishr. Bishr asks, who is this lady? He says, they say to him, oh Bishr, be gentle with your words. This is Baneen, the mother of Abbas and the sons. They say Baneen asks him, Salamullahi alayha, oh Bishr, what is the news of my son Hussain? I hear you have news from Karbala. Bishr says, may Allah give you patience, Baneen, on the death of your son Abdullah. Baneen says, I did not ask about Abdullah. He says, may Allah give you patience on the death of your son Ja'far. She says, I did not ask about Ja'far. He says, may Allah give you patience on the death of your son Uthman. She says, I did not ask about my son. He says, may Allah give you patience, Ya Baneen, on the death of your son Abbas. They say at that moment, Baneen is holding Fadil, the son of Mullah Abbas. She drops him. She says, Bishr, you have broken my heart, but I did not ask about Abbas. But surely Baneen knew now that Abbas would not be breathing if Hussain was not alive. Abbas would never live a moment before his master's shahadat. So if Abbas is gone, surely Hussain is gone. Bishr says, Baneen, may Allah give you patience on the death of your son Hussain. Baneen begins to cry out, Wa Hussaina, Wa Hussaina. She goes to the house of Bibi Zainab alayhi salam. They say Bibi Zainab returned, and the situation was such that what? When she knocked on the door, her husband answered the door. He said, oh, old lady, what can I do for you? And Bibi Zainab responded, oh, my husband Abdullah, what has happened to Zainab al-Kubra such that her husband cannot recognize her? She says, oh Abdullah, if only you had seen Kufa and Sham. She goes into the house, she mourns for her sons. Those sons she didn't cry for in Karbala, she didn't cry for in Kufa and Sham. When she sees the two small mattresses, now she cries for Own and Muhammad, until there's a knock at the door. They say Zainab said, do not disturb her, she is mourning. They say, but it is Baneen. Zainab hears the name of her mother Baneen. She goes running. She embraces Baneen. Baneen begins to cry, Wa Hussaina, Wa Hussaina. Zainab begins to cry, Wa Abbasa, Wa Abbasa. Bibi Fidda watching cries out, Wa Fatima, Wa Fatima, until the entire household is screaming, Wa Abata, Wa Aliyah. وإنا إليه راجعون أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. We will request our brother Hussain to recite the Ziyarat of Arbaeen. If you bear with us 2 moments while we just connect him. Hussain, Bismillah, whenever you're ready.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام على ولي الله وحبيبه السلام على خليل الله ونجيبه السلام على صفي الله وابن السفيه السلام على حسين المظلوم الشهيد السلام على أسير التربة وقتيل عبرات اللهم إني أشهد أنه وليك وصفيك وابن سفيك الفائز بكرامته أكرمته بشهادة وحببته بسعادة واجتبيته بطيب الولادة وجعلته سيدا من سادتي وقائدا من قادة وزائدا من سعادة وآتيته موريث الأنبياء وجعلته حجة على خلقك من الأوصياء فعزر في الدعاء ومنح النصح وبذل محجته فيك ليستنقذوا عبادك من الجهالة وحيرة الزلالة وقد أوزر عليه من غرته الدنيا وباختاه بالأرزال العدنى واشترى آخرتها بالثمن الأوكس وتغطرس وترتع فيها روحه وأسختك وأسخط نبيك وأعطى من عبادك أحلف الشقاق والنفاق وحملة الأوزر المستوجبين النار فجاحدهم فيك صابر محتسبا حتى سفك في طاعتك دمه واستبيح حريمه اللهم فلعنهم لعنا وبالعوائز وعذبهم عذابا عليما السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الأوصياء أشهد أنك عبيد الله وابن عبيده اشتى سعيدا ومزيته حميدا ومتق فقيدا مظلوما شهيدا وأشهد أن الله منجز ما وعدك ومحلك من خذلك ومعذب من قتلك وأشهد أنك وفيك بعهد الله وجاهدت في سبيله حتى أتاك اليقين فلعن الله من قتلك ولعن الله من ظلمك ولعن الله أمة سمعت برزية به اللهم إني أشهدك إني ولي لمن ولاه وعدو لمن عاده بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المتحرة لم تنجسك الجاحنية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك المضلع حمات من ثيابها وأشهد أنك من دائم الدين وأركان المسلمين ومعقل المؤمنين وأشهد أنك الإمام البري التقي الرازي الزكي الحادي المهدي وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلم الهدى وعروة الوثقى والحجة حجة على أهل الدنيا وأشهد أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن بشري ديني وخوتي وخواتيمي عملي وقلبي بكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع ونصرتي لكم معدة حتى يأذن الله لكم فمعكم لا مع عدوكم صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وأجسادكم وشاهدكم وغائبكم وظاهركم وباطنكم آمين يا رب العالمين.
اللهم صل
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Jazakallah, Hussain. We request you all to remember our Imam in your prayers on this day of Arbaeen and pray for the hastening of his reappearance, alayhi salam.